wanted to get these out well before the market. Um, so a lot of things with the Fed was sort of a nothing burger, but it so also shook up the market. So I'll show you some things on charts. CONY's doing very well. Had a whole bunch of trades in CONY because a lot of shares happened. So let's take a look at what happened on the shares in terms of trades. So they added about almost 500,000. I'll give you that number in a minute. So whenever they do that, all of you that are familiar with this, so when money flows into the fund, right? So CONY was on sale because Coin was on sale, and Coin reports earnings of this Thursday, again depending on what your time is, after the market closes. So there was add to the synthetic, our 517, 260 synthetic, which we're well below, right, at closing at 210. So we bought 590 calls, sold 590 puts. So that put a lot of money in our pocket. We only had to pay 476 because it's currently so far under the 260. That's only a little bit, 5, 10, 12 trading days premium. And then we always buy calls, so we bought 247, 590, sold these. So we're well below that. We didn't get a lot of premium, but we should be able to collect that. And then they bought back and closed a few calls because we're so far ahead of the game on these 255s being down at 210. So they just took those off the table with 2 days to go, and especially with earnings coming up. And then they sold the same number. They took 200 away that we had already collected most of the money, so that we didn't give back much. And they sold 255s out on 510. So that's what's going on there. Let me go show you that on the sheet. All right, so here we are. Let's talk about what transpired in the day. Oh, actually, I wanted to cover some news, so I jumped into this. And so before I show you that, let me just go through a few things. So what did the trading day look like? So I pulled up here my Thinkorswim, and I have BTC up here. Okay, so I have a 15-minute chart, but I wanted to basically, let's even go to a 1 day. So here's the Fed announcement, right? Going into this 2 o'clock. So up goes BTC, up goes a lot of the indexes, up goes gold, and then it turns around and Powell's done, announcing. Everybody knew they probably weren't going to raise. Strong probability they weren't going to raise. They certainly weren't going to lower. And the more he yapped, and then basically the market turned around and sold off, right? So this dotted line then is your transition into after hours. So the problem was, this is, I think, market close. And the problem was we closed below 60,000. We had been hoping we wouldn't, right? But the market went down to 57-ish, and the close after hours has got us back right now with almost 3 hours to market open. Or actually about 6 hours till market open. We're at 58,039. So ideally we get back in that zone of 60, where 60 and 67 are support and resistance, because 52,000 is going to come calling pretty quickly if we stay in this zone. So I wanted to show you that. There's a little bit of news that I had that I think I wanted to incorporate. So here's a piece. That's not it. So Coinbase today announced support for the Lightning Network via Lightspark. And what that really means is that Coinbase today has a hard time doing the very tiny transactions. So with support with the Lightning Network via Lightspark, people will be able to use Coinbase if they want to pay a small amount, right? Because the Bitcoin itself, as you know, when it has, 58,000 value, you want to pay in these sashes or whatever they call them, sats. So that's kind of a key piece. And what I'm going to try to do on these updates is just give you a little bit of news that I think is impacting. So that's a super positive that Coinbase is rolling and did roll out this functionality. The other thing I advise is, never go all in at one price on these things because, CONY is very attractive. So what happened on the day? So CONY closed at 210. I think the low on the day was, if I change this to coin, I think it was 198, right? So here's the pre-market yesterday. It got down to 197, which is really attractive, and then got as high as 218 after the Fed's initial no change. And then this was the close, right? Right around one of these numbers, 210. And then this is the after hours. So we're setting up also on coin, we're setting around 214. So that tells us that maybe we're going to recover and start back up. So let's see. So to me, 23.26 is pretty attractive. I mean, I do remember it at 17, 18 at one point. And 30 has been the high. But based on these payouts and continued. So let's take a look at these trades. So the two trades that they put on for 510, they just bought 100 each. And that was because they closed out these 200, right? 100 and 100. These were the 805s that they had written. And at one point, this was 310. So in order to account for all this, I had to break these 310 out, leave 110 that they still own, and show the other 100 and 100 that they bought back at different prices, $1.97 and $1.99, right? So we had collected 80,000 on each one of those, and it cost us 19,700 and 19,900 to buy it back. So we retained a profit of 60,800 and 60,600. So minor in that sense. And that was the bulk, except for the, let's see, everything on 5-1. This 590, right? We sold at 247.50. That was because of all the money that flowed in with all of the people buying CONY on sale. So we collected 123,900, right? So altogether, all of this open stuff, excluding the 510, because we can't collect that. I've summarized that for you on my active or weekly. So we've got 10.8 million just in the stuff that expires. Now again, we've already been paid that. It shows in payments, but we want to keep that, right? Or 98%, 99%, right? The lowest threat we have is the 240s. Okay, and that's 285. It's pretty sure that the 18,000, the big bulk, we're going to keep that 10.1 million or 10 million of the 10.8. So we should be in really good shape on these 5.3s, and then there's only 200 right now. Now remember, on Friday, they'll close all these out and roll them over. But guess what? You've heard me say it a bunch of times, right? We did. Um, we do have earnings on 5/2, or right around 4:30. It depends on West Coast, East Coast. Okay, so right after the market closes, 30 minutes, the conference call starts. Probably 10 after, 15 after is when Coinbase announces their earnings, and then the call gets into, and the issue there is guidance. Normally the earnings themselves sort of speak, but when they elaborate on what they see going forward and all the rest, the reason I'm so positive on the earnings and expecting a pretty good beat is because regardless of what Bitcoin is doing, if it's trading south, which we all know it is lately, right? The last 2 or 3 weeks. So there's no question about that. It's been consolidating and breaking down. But that doesn't prevent Coinbase from still transacting, right? They're kind of like the general store in the gold rush. They're selling picks and shovels and, mining gear, lights. So that's kind of what Coinbase is doing in a different way, right? You can't transact in crypto. They're kind of the premier exchange that you go to. All right. So I updated some of these. Everything was up. Implied volatility went up as you could expect. I don't think I updated this chart. I think that's yesterday. So we would be a hair lower here, but we would be right back to the 210 line. So our weeklies look great. And let me show you the synthetic because we picked up more money there also. And we were at a 107 million paper loss on our synthetic, and we moved that back to 97 million. So again, this doesn't count in your payout, but it's a mental stigma, right? That it's a liability. So we want in 12 trading days, right? On 5/17, we want to be back to 260. So we can start making money instead of losing money. And you can see that 108 million of the loss just by getting to 260, all that gets wiped out. Now, we won't have any value here either, right at 260. So we'd pretty much break even there, but we wouldn't have a loss. And we wrote the 590 since we're well below. When we bought calls, we only spent 280,000. When we sold puts, okay, we collected 3.3, but that adds to the potential loss here if we don't recover, right? So we're sitting on a 16.9, call it 17 million gain. That counts, right? So I'll show you that as I always do on the payments. So we've covered the weekly, we've covered the synthetic. Let's talk just a hair in April and what happened. Let's roll out. So we've got all of our revenue. We bought back a couple, rolled out. So here's where the money flowed, right? So all of a sudden, I just keep doing 5-1 here because I have to show all these transactions. But bottom line, our cash changed 38 million. Well, why did it change 38 million? Right? Because almost 500,000. Let me go to my holdings is where I show that. Sometimes I added a column in Misty, but I didn't add it in CONY. I'm just doing it over here in holdings. Yeah, we went up 525,000 shares, right? Doesn't look so big when it's 3%, but that's pretty significant. I don't recall doing that increase very recently. So again, when we go through the holdings, this is our synthetic, right? We had a loss 4 days ago, then it got better, then we went way down, and so today when we popped up some, it helped, right? But we want to see that move back and go away. But let's just go over this for a minute so you guys are familiar with me. Got all the cash up here. Here's our synthetic. So we added to those guys, but the values went up. This shrunk a little bit and this went up, right? But we wanted to get back to where we have a positive or at least a break even. So these all declined, right, in value. So we're just closer and closer to closing them all out with no value, except for this 200 here is the 510s. All right, let's get into the stuff and then one other thing that you guys want to know. So we closed at 23.26, and so we're selling at 2% discount to what the NAV value should be based on the share count and total assets. That's how that works. All right, let's get to the stuff you guys care about. So I continue to revise this a little bit. This dropped a little bit from 181, I think, or 184, 181. Why? Because look at the big volume of shares, right? We went up 525,000 shares, even though we added money here. So what we've got going on is more people to distribute the money. So what I'm saying, they're going to pay the full 177. I don't think there's any question about that. And likely, even though mentally we've got that 97 million loss, that's all going to change Thursday and Friday, I'm sure. But we had a 50 million carry forward, right? Because they didn't pay it all out. We had great earnings and they gave us 279. So they used almost half of this and we hardly had any money in short call, which is what they normally use to pay out. So I see them paying $2 up to maybe 277. Maybe they take $1 out of here. Now, I'll tell you what could drive it to $2.95 to $3 to $3.10 would be a substantial earnings beat, which I think there's some likelihood, okay? But let me show you what we want ideally. Let's say they come out and they beat earnings by 40 or 50% that the street's expecting, and they show, and the guidance doesn't say, oh, we see recession and blah, 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 right? Which could then hurt it also. So you want reasonable guidance, you want a big beat, and you don't want to exceed your weeklies to take away this money, right? So we've got room for that to happen. We're trading at 210, so let's say we go through the day and we end at 218, okay? That doesn't do a whole lot, really. It doesn't change with it unless more money flows into the fund, which today, pretty much today and tomorrow, the money can flow in and still be counted, right? So these are far enough out there. The lowest one is 240. It's 14.24%, right? And it's only 285. So it would have to go up 20%. So when I look at this, I say it's okay if we run to 247. That would lower all of that liability, most of that liability on the synthetic, okay? And they would feel very comfortable, I think, in paying out more, okay? And what I mean by that, it's right here. I think they would take that substantial amount. They may take $1, right, or $1.27, and all of a sudden you're somewhere from 277 to 314 or 317. So it's not out of the realm if they beat and they move up, right? And conversely, and they will see that because they meet Thursday after market hours to determine all of the yield maxes, since, well, I say all of them, all but the group ones. It doesn't cover YMAG, YMAX, or ULTI. Those all get paid on a different date, but all of the 19 single stock funds in yield max, they go through them all and make a determination Thursday evening, and then so they're going to see this Coinbase earnings before they make a determination, right? And they're going to see how, you know, the aftermarket, what it looks like. Now they're going to roll this out before the market opens, so there's no impact on what trading does beyond after hours. And they will get to see that, and they'll get to see the earnings and make their own determination. Okay, I don't want to beat that to death. Let's get into, so that's a good situation for us. So let's get on to Misty. So Misty did not have any trades, so we don't have to worry about a change there. So what did Misty do? Well, Misty hasn't been handling things as well, right? Because MicroStrategy is so Bitcoin focused, right? Almost just correlates because its earnings are relatively small at this point, and its claim to fame is the largest single entity owner of Bitcoin, and by far the largest corporation who has its treasury completely in Bitcoin. So they continue to add. So down 3.45%, right? Went from 1065 to 1028, and we were only down 3.25, right? So slightly outperformed. Look at this the other day. We slightly outperformed. So at least Misty is hanging in there in that sense. And we still got the same amount of money out there, about 2.3, 2.4 million. So let's go over. Since they did add 25,000 shares, so I shouldn't say, so 675,000 flowed in by adding 25, but they didn't put any trades on. So people are buying a bargain, but they're also in shock. You got to remember, this thing was 45 at the height. So if you bought it at 45, you're all panicking, when if you're bullish on Bitcoin, the underlying, and then you're bullish on MicroStrategy, then you should direct cost average. If you're bullish, again, I'm not telling you what to do, right? But if you're bullish the underlying, then you're going to get dividend income, and you're going to end up getting really good income over time as it recovers. So let's take a look here at the chart. Here's all of our weeklies, right? We've got 2.4 million already paid that we want to keep, right? So we're doing awesome on the weeklies. Let me fix this. So the bulk, we're at 34% out of the money, so they don't have any more earnings. Earnings already happened. So these look pretty awesome. Even the 1180 is out there at almost 15%, right? So this looks good to keep the 2.4 million. Everything is down. Misty was down. Mr. was down. And I added some on the chart. So I showed you a little bit before about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin went down to 57. It's trading at 58 in the aftermarket. Let's see if that changed since it trades all the time. Yeah, we're 58, 180. Okay, so we want it to capture 60,000. If it gets back in the 60,000 channel, then it was sort of a false breakout, false breakdown, right? But looking somewhat at the bull flag channel, you know, where are we? Well, we clearly hit this mark, bounced a little, because I think the low of the day was right. Well, of course, that's a different, yeah. You got Mr. and then you have the one we're really tracking, and that affects Misty, right? So when I look at this channel, I still see if Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin doesn't quickly move back to the 60,000 and get in that 67,000 resistance support zone, then it's very vulnerable to moving down and trading at 52, right? And by the way, it's 58 now. But 52K is the 200-day moving average, right? So that should be major support. Again, I'm not showing that on Mr. But Mr. has some massive support here at 800. People will go, oh my God, it's another, 20%, right? But realistically, could that happen? Yeah, it could happen, but that's probably 42, 45, 47 in BTC, which are just about the massive support, right? 52 is major support for Bitcoin, and then below that it could go to 47. So my gut says we could just bounce and start moving up along with Bitcoin here. The volume wasn't really a breakout. There was a little bit bigger volume. But let's see, it's had a full day now after its after hours earnings on Monday. So I'm not seeing anything that indicates it's a massive breakdown. There's a small gap right above 800. I don't think that has to get filled, but it could. All right, so that's kind of where I'm at. Let's look at the payment tab, which is what you guys really care about and what I care about as a shareholder. So I've said this a few times. We didn't add 25,000 shares we added. So we're at 256, right? Which is normally great on a share income. And had we been a winner on our synthetics, we could get another dollar, another $1.50 and have another $4 payment. But unfortunately, when things are trending down, it's easier to win on your short calls and much harder to win on your synthetic, right? And as a matter of fact, we flipped on our own synthetic because we've gone down so low. It wasn't just the other day that we had a $10 million gain on the books, not on this, right? Because you got to close it out to get it. And now we're setting with a potential loss even on the 1150s if we had to close out now because we're trading at 1028, right? So all they're going to do is pay us in this situation 2/3. They could say, well, this is a high IV, guys get 4, we don't want them to leave the fund, we're going to pay maybe 221, right? Just magically get to the $2.01. So that's why I give it the range I give it, right? Hey, Bitcoin bounces and the synthetic comes back up a little bit. I don't see, maybe a bunch of shares people would buy, but today would have been the day to probably buy the shares because 27 is pretty low. Where could this go if those other things play out? So I'll give you a little bit of info on that. So on the chart, where is my chart? Whoops, it is in weekly. Okay. So trying to correlate, 52 would take us down another 10% in Bitcoin from the close. So that could translate to Misty being 2430 or something, right? 52 puts Misty around 24. If that breaks and we go to 47, this thing could go $22 or $21. Now, people that don't have any dry powder, right, that are all freaked out and bought it at 40, that's awful. You're hating life. But if you keep the ability to add, this isn't unusual for crypto, right? They have a 50% drawdowns many, many times. Do we like it? No, right? And Misty is reason. If you bought it at 20, I bought some at 21. I bought some at 23, so I'm pretty lucky in that sense. But I'll buy more if this thing gets to 24. I'll buy more if I see it at 22. So because I'm bullish on the underlying. Okay, guys, I don't want to beat a dead horse. We've covered everything. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for fun and education. Have a good one. Happy trading, and let's get moving. All right. Bye. Good night.